The desert wind carries secrets across New Mexico's endless landscape, whispering through sagebrush and red rock formations that have witnessed countless stories unfold beneath the vast southwestern sky. But some secrets refuse to stay buried, no matter how many years pass or how many storms sweep across the high desert terrain. On a scorching afternoon in July 2024, one such secret finally clawed its way to the surface, shattering the carefully constructed peace of a small community that had spent nearly a quarter-century trying to forget. The phone call came to Detective Maria Santos at 3:17 p.m., interrupting her review of routine paperwork in the cramped offices of the Sandoval County Sheriff's Department. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Rebecca Chen, a forensic genealogist from Albuquerque, whose reputation for solving impossible cases had made her a legend among law enforcement circles throughout the Southwest. Santos had been expecting this call for months, ever since she'd submitted decades-old evidence to the state's new genetic analysis program, but nothing could have prepared her for the words that would transform everything she thought she knew about the most haunting case of her career. The evidence in question had been collected on September 23, 2000, from a crime scene that defied explanation and tormented investigators for more than 2 decades. That autumn morning had dawned clear and cool in the high desert community of Esperanza Springs, population 4,200, where adobe houses clustered around a modest main street, and families had lived for generations on land their great-grandparents had settled. The town's Spanish name meant hope, but hope had been in short supply since 18-year-old Isabella Rodriguez vanished without a trace from her family's ranch on the outskirts of town. Isabella's disappearance had occurred during what should have been the happiest time of her young life. She had just started her freshman year at the University of New Mexico, commuting daily from the family ranch where she helped her father tend to cattle and horses that had sustained their family for 3 generations. Isabella was studying elementary education with dreams of returning to teach in the same small school where she had learned to read and write. Her professors described her as dedicated and enthusiastic, always arriving early for classes and staying late to ask thoughtful questions about child development and teaching methods. On the evening of September 22, 2000, Isabella had driven home from her evening statistics class in her reliable Honda Civic, the same car she had purchased with money earned from summer jobs at the local feed store and tourist shop. Her parents, Carlos and Elena Rodriguez, had waited dinner for her as they did every Tuesday and Thursday when she had late classes. Elena had prepared Isabella's favorite meal of green chili stew and fresh tortillas, keeping it warm in the oven while they watched the local news and discussed plans for the upcoming Harvest Festival that would bring visitors from across northern New Mexico. Isabella arrived home at 8:45 p.m., her backpack filled with textbooks and assignment sheets that reflected her serious approach to education. She kissed her parents goodnight around 10:30 p.m. and retreated to her childhood bedroom, where posters of her high school basketball team shared wall space with college acceptance letters and photographs of the horses she had raised from foals. Carlos Rodriguez, making his final security check of the ranch buildings as he had every night for 20 years, saw light beneath Isabella's door at 11:15 p.m. and heard the soft sounds of her stereo playing the country music she had loved since childhood. When Elena knocked on Isabella's door the next morning to wake her for an early class, silence greeted her gentle calls. The door was locked from the inside, unusual for a young woman who rarely sought privacy from parents she trusted completely. Carlos used a screwdriver to remove the door hinges, revealing a bedroom that looked exactly as Isabella had left it the previous evening. Her bed remained unslept in, textbooks lay open on her desk, and her clothes for the next day hung neatly on the chair beside her dresser. The window screen had been carefully removed from the inside and placed against the wall beneath the sill. Isabella's room was located on the 2nd floor of the ranch house, accessible only by climbing a wooden ladder or scaling the rough stucco walls that offered few handholds for even the most athletic intruder. No ladder was found near the building, and the hard-packed earth beneath Isabella's window showed no footprints or signs of disturbance, despite recent rain that had left the ground soft enough to capture even the lightest impressions. Isabella's Honda Civic remained parked in its usual spot beside the ranch house, keys still hanging on the hook by the kitchen door where she placed them every evening. Her purse sat undisturbed on her dresser, containing her driver's license, university identification card, and $43 in cash she had earned from her part-time job. Most mysteriously, Isabella's shoes were lined up neatly by her bedroom door, suggesting she had either left barefoot or been carried from the room. The initial investigation revealed no signs of struggle within Isabella's bedroom or anywhere else in the ranch house. Her parents had heard nothing unusual during the night, despite sleeping in the adjacent room with windows open to catch the cool desert breeze. The family's 3 dogs, normally vigilant guardians who barked at any unfamiliar presence, had remained quiet throughout the night. Ranch hands who lived in a trailer on the property reported seeing nothing suspicious, and the nearest neighbor lived more than 2 miles away across empty rangeland dotted with juniper and pinyon pine. Detective Ray Martinez, who had transferred to Sandoval County from Albuquerque seeking the slower pace of rural law enforcement, found himself confronting the most perplexing case of his 20-year career. The crime scene offered no conventional clues about how Isabella had left her locked bedroom or where she might have gone. Fingerprint analysis of the window and screen revealed only Isabella's own prints, along with those of family members who had touched the surfaces during routine cleaning. No foreign DNA was detected on the window frame, the screen, or Isabella's personal belongings. Search teams combed the rugged terrain surrounding the Rodriguez Ranch, exploring arroyos and mesas that stretched toward the distant Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Volunteers from Esperanza Springs and neighboring communities spent weeks examining every abandoned building, every hidden canyon, every possible location where a young woman might have been taken or might have sought refuge. The New Mexico State Police deployed helicopters equipped with thermal imaging equipment, while search and rescue teams brought in tracking dogs that lost Isabella's scent at the base of the ranch house walls. The investigation expanded to include Isabella's university classmates, professors, and anyone who might have had contact with her during her brief college career. Martinez interviewed her study partners, fellow commuter students, and the staff at the campus library where she spent hours between classes. Every lead produced the same result. Isabella was universally described as responsible, focused on her studies, and deeply connected to her family and community. She had no secret relationships, no hidden problems, no reason to disappear voluntarily from a life she appeared to love. As autumn turned to winter and winter melted into spring, Isabella Rodriguez became another name in the growing files of missing persons who had vanished into the vast landscapes of the American Southwest. Her case joined the hundreds of others that haunted law enforcement agencies across New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado, young people who had simply walked out of their lives and into mysteries that seemed designed to resist solution. The breakthrough that would finally illuminate the darkness surrounding Isabella's fate began with a phone call 24 years later, when science had evolved far enough to read secrets hidden in microscopic evidence that 2000's technology couldn't detect. Dr. Rebecca Chen's voice carried the weight of certainty that only comes from years of wrestling genetic puzzles from degraded evidence and impossible timelines. The DNA profile she had extracted from a single hair strand found caught in Isabella Rodriguez's bedroom window frame had yielded 13 genetic markers, enough to generate a familial match through the FBI's combined DNA index system. But the name that appeared on Detective Santos's computer screen that July afternoon belonged to someone who had never appeared in the original investigation files. Someone whose connection to Isabella seemed impossible until the pieces began falling into place with devastating clarity. Thomas Benjamin Lawson had been a traveling construction worker in September 2000, part of a crew contracted to install new cell phone towers across rural New Mexico as wireless networks expanded into previously unserved areas. Employment records showed that Lawson's crew had been working on a tower installation project 12 miles from the Rodriguez Ranch during the weeks leading up to Isabella's disappearance. The crew had completed their work on September 20th and moved on to their next job site in Arizona on September 24th, a timeline that positioned Lawson in the area during the exact window when Isabella vanished. Santos spent the following weeks reconstructing Lawson's movements during that crucial period, discovering a pattern of behavior that had remained hidden for more than 2 decades. Local business owners in Esperanza Springs remembered the construction crew's frequent stops for supplies and meals, but several recalled one crew member who seemed different from the others. Lawson had often separated from his coworkers during evening hours, driving the rural roads alone in his personal pickup truck while claiming to be exploring the desert landscapes that reminded him of his childhood in West Texas. The investigation revealed that Lawson had a history of approaching young women under various pretenses, often claiming to be lost or needing directions to job sites. 3 women in Esperanza Springs came forward with memories they had dismissed as insignificant at the time, describing encounters with a polite construction worker who had seemed overly interested in their daily routines and living situations. One woman, Maria Sandoval, remembered Lawson asking detailed questions about the Rodriguez family while purchasing supplies at her hardware store, inquiring about the ranch's isolation and whether the family had security systems or guard dogs. Most disturbing was the discovery that Lawson's construction work had provided him with detailed knowledge of the area's geography and infrastructure. Cell tower installation required extensive site surveys and route planning, giving him legitimate reasons to drive rural roads and observe properties from elevated positions. His crew's work schedule had allowed him to study the patterns of local families, learning when teenagers like Isabella would be alone or vulnerable to approach. Santos's investigation into Lawson's background revealed a carefully concealed pattern of predatory behavior spanning multiple states and decades. He had worked construction jobs throughout the Southwest, always moving on before his activities could attract serious attention from local law enforcement. Previous employers described him as competent but solitary, someone who completed his assignments efficiently, but formed no lasting relationships with coworkers or community members. The detective discovered that Lawson had been questioned briefly in connection with 3 other missing person cases between 1995 and 2005, always as part of routine canvassing of construction crews working in the areas where young women had disappeared. In each case, his alibis had been accepted at face value, and his clean criminal record had deflected suspicion toward more obvious suspects with histories of violence or sexual offenses. By November 2024, Santos had assembled enough evidence to convince prosecutors that genetic genealogy had finally identified Isabella Rodriguez's killer, but Thomas Lawson would never face trial for his crimes. Department of Motor Vehicle Records showed that he had died in a single-vehicle accident in Nevada in 2018, his pickup truck leaving a mountain highway during a winter storm and plunging into a canyon where his body wasn't discovered for 3 weeks. The medical examiner's report listed alcohol intoxication as a contributing factor in the crash that ended the life of a man who had evaded justice for nearly 2 decades. The revelation of Lawson's identity and death created a complex mixture of resolution and frustration for Isabella's family and the community that had never stopped searching for answers. Carlos and Elena Rodriguez, now in their 70s and bearing the physical toll of 24 years of uncertainty, finally learned the identity of the person who had destroyed their daughter's future and shattered their family's peace. But the knowledge came without the satisfaction of seeing justice served in a courtroom or hearing a confession that might explain the specific circumstances of Isabella's final hours. Santos faced the difficult task of reconstructing what had likely happened on September 22, 2000, based on evidence and behavioral analysis rather than witness testimony or detailed confessions. The forensic evidence suggested that Lawson had approached the Rodriguez ranch sometime after midnight, possibly claiming to be seeking help with a disabled vehicle or asking for directions. His construction work had taught him how to disable security systems and approach buildings without triggering motion sensors or alerting guard dogs. The removed window screen and lack of struggle indicated that Isabella had initially cooperated with her abductor, perhaps believing she was helping someone in genuine distress. Lawson's experience with construction equipment would have provided him with tools and techniques for accessing second-story windows without leaving conventional signs of forced entry. The careful placement of the screen inside the bedroom suggested someone familiar with crime scene investigation, aware that obvious evidence of break-ins would immediately focus police attention on external threats. Santos theorized that Lawson had convinced Isabella to leave her bedroom voluntarily, possibly claiming that her parents were in danger and needed her help outside. The absence of her shoes suggested that she had intended to return quickly, never suspecting that she was walking toward her death. Lawson's knowledge of the local terrain would have enabled him to transport Isabella to a remote location where her remains might never be discovered, despite the extensive searches that had covered thousands of acres of high desert wilderness. The psychological profile that emerged from Santos's investigation painted Lawson as a methodical predator who used his transient lifestyle and legitimate employment to identify and approach victims in isolated communities where his presence wouldn't arouse suspicion. His construction work provided perfect cover for reconnaissance activities, allowing him to study potential targets and plan approaches that minimize the risk of detection or escape. The case file revealed that Lawson had possessed detailed maps of the area surrounding Esperanza Springs, annotated with notes about family schedules, security measures, and escape routes. These materials were discovered among his personal effects after his death in Nevada, but their significance wasn't recognized until Santos requested a complete inventory of items found in his truck. The maps included specific notations about the Rodriguez ranch, indicating that Isabella's abduction had been planned rather than opportunistic. The DNA evidence that finally solved Isabella Rodriguez's disappearance demonstrates how advancing forensic science continues bringing justice to families who refuse to surrender hope. While Thomas Lawson escaped earthly accountability, the truth has emerged from 24 years of desert silence. For the Rodriguez family and Esperanza Springs community, knowing their daughter's killer can never harm another family provides the closure that has eluded them for nearly a quarter century.